Thanks for tuning in to CPA Life, where we talk culture and growth with folks that are going against the grain in an industry that has been stuck with a "we've always done it that way" mindset for far too long. Join host John Randolph and learn how a sustainable, family-friendly career in public accounting doesn't have to be the exception to the rule. Welcome to CPA Life.
Hey folks, thanks for taking the time out of your day to connect and join us here for a new episode of the CPA Life podcast. I'm excited about today's conversation because I'm joined by Nate Goodman, who's the founder and president of Goodman CPA, which is a 6-year-old firm that has had some really amazing growth over the last few years and is going all in on building a more people-centric, advisory-focused firm. And we're going to dig into a lot of that today. So Nate, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
It's been a little crazy summer for you guys, just from growth and what next steps look like, and we're going to get into talking about all that. But before we do that, what I typically like to do is give people a little bit of a picture of where you came from and how you got to where you are today running your own firm. Was your background one that was kind of a traditional public accounting route background, or a little bit more non-traditional?
So I am a non-traditional accountant. My bachelor's degree is in church ministry, student ministry. I have a heart for people. I thought I would be a youth pastor, and now I'm a tax accountant. So yeah, God put me on a 180 there in terms of opening doors. But I started to get a heart for helping churches with finances. And then one thing led to another. I shook hands with a mentor of mine at our church on a Sunday morning. And he told him what my vision was of trying to help churches with finances. And he told me, no one's going to trust you if you don't have either education or experience. And I said, well, I have a church ministry degree and I have a master's in business. He said, that's not going to cut it. So I came down to his office. I just finished my master's like that spring. And he said, I think you should go back to school.
Oh my goodness.
And then sit for the CPA exam. And so that was 2019. And like the week after that, I was re-enrolled in classes. And then we had our first kid that winter. And I started with him that like December of 2019. I had started doing some like consulting work, very light. Obviously, not many people trusted me. And then I brought on my first client under my firm in October of 2019, as I had started my accounting practice and kind of had some mentors that I could say, hey, I've got people who will help me, so you can trust me to do this. So then I also started with that mentor at his firm doing taxes, and COVID hit not long after that. I was sitting for the CPA exam, and we had our newborn baby all in that same year span. And so 2020 was a year of learning, of navigating the COVID crisis stuff. And it was an incredible growing year. We have finished the CPA exam, and then the mentor who had hired me was also in his mid-80s. So by 2021, he said, hey, I'm ready to, hang up my hat and actually retire at 85. And so he offered to sell me his practice. And so I purchased his practice. And along that way, I was starting to do CFO services. I was doing some bookkeeping for churches. And then I started to get some businesses I was doing bookkeeping for. And then in that fall of 2021, I purchased his practice, and it came with another person that was like his partner, who was also in his 70s. 2021, we had our second kiddo. So bought a business, had our second kid. We had bought a house by that point. And then in 2021, it was just so much growing and learning on how to run an accounting practice. So it was just me in the beginning. Then I hired my first bookkeeper and a director of operations. And then we had the opportunity to acquire the third person that was in our building. And that was in January of 2023. Between those timeframes, 2022 was a huge growing year of navigating running the tax practice. We had hired another CPA and made a lot of promises and under-delivered in those areas, and learned a lot from hiring and learning how to bring people on. And then we really hit like a rock bottom in 2022. I was trying to price things myself. I didn't have a lot of support, and I totally dropped the ball, I felt like, with the budget and like running the firm itself. And so that was a huge turning point, because that's when we got plugged in with a coaching group. They helped us learn how to price things correctly. We really went full steam ahead into advisory services. And that's where we do tax advisory, was built around that. We repriced our CFO services, and we really started to accelerate growth. In fall of 2022, we acquired that firm, and we sat around like 400,000 in revenue. Once we had acquired everything, we had acquired about 350,000 in revenue, and the rest was organic. And then we had a 300% growth in 2023.
My.
That's where tax advisory really took off. It was what people were looking for. And I've always had this idea of like, we've got to challenge the status quo. Like, tax season should not kill you. There's got to be a better way to do accounting and interact with clients. And advisory for me was the answer, because it would spread the work out all year long, that we didn't have to, obtain 200 tax prep clients to support another person's salary.
Right.
2023, we started to nail down our mission of the firm, which is to financially empower business owners to achieve their God-given purpose. We're on a mission to actually transform communities that we interact with throughout the US, that business owners that come in contact with our firm should have better financial clarity, be able to understand where they're at and not get hit with surprise tax bills. And if they have that extra money, our goal is they pour it back into their employees, into their families, into their communities. So we're crunching numbers every day, but what we're really doing is making impact in business owners' lives, which is making impact in communities all over the US. And so that started to get me jazzed about I can get behind this. I can get excited about accounting and going to work every day because we're actually empowering people. 2023, the growth, that 300% growth, was a huge learning curve. We made lots of mistakes in process. And then 2024, our team started to grow. So now we just finished the book Traction. And I think what we've realized is we're hitting a ceiling, and we're realizing that every time you grow, you have to learn to change and fix the process on where the things are causing you not to be able to grow to the next level. And for me, growth has always been about impact.
Yep.
So it's like, if we can create more budget for team members to come in, then hopefully our goal is it allows us to give a better work-life balance to other accountants, and hopefully give them access to a mission-driven company where they can have impact on their own clients as well. So I don't know if that's the long short of it, right? Some acquisitions. We now have 3 kids, 3 boys. I'm a boy dad. Most days I go home and I get tackled and get wrestled. That's just the life I live, but I love it. So I want to be home as much as possible, and I want my team to be able to do the same. So
when you talk about mission focus, mission impact, I'm thinking about a firm owner that we had on the podcast earlier this year, Chris Johnson. And one of the things that Chris took from a predecessor firm that he worked for early in his career, where he had a great mentor, and brought it to his firm, was once a year, the owner of the firm would go to all of the employees, and it started just kind of as a lark, and it turned into something that replicated every year. And Chris is now taking it into his firm, but he gives everybody in the firm $1,000 cash and tells them, go make an impact in your community. Some way, somehow, go make an impact in your community. And what he did his first year was, him and another guy that he worked with, I think it was his first year he did this, him and another guy that he worked with, both of their kids went to school at a public school. He's in San Antonio. And one of his kids, I think, was telling him one day about a bunch of kids that eat lunch in the cafeteria. And they were talking about, how hard it is for their families to afford to pay for lunches. And they went and took that money and paid for kids' lunches for the rest of the school year for a group of kids. Those are things, I think, that when you start talking about mission focus and mission driven, it becomes more than just compliance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we've evolved into a world where compliance, and I'm not talking just in accounting, but I think anything that we're doing as a service provider to our clients, anything that is just compliance, I think, is table stakes. Really, now what we're doing is trying to understand, like you're talking about, what drives our clients, what gets them excited, what motivates them.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do to give them more resources, whatever those resources are, time, money, people, to do the things that light a fire for them, because that ultimately is going to light a fire for you. And it sounds like you guys are on a path to allow you to do that.
100%. One of our company priorities is generosity. And so we currently, as we're working to become as financially healthy and stable as we can, we set a percentage aside into our rainy day fund for the company. And then we currently are setting aside 1% of our revenue for charitable giving. And so we have a few different sponsoring organizations that we go to sponsor once a month. And just recently, I was now send a message out to our team. It's like, hey, because of what you do, we were able to sponsor this organization this month, and here's some of the cool things that they're doing. And our end goal is to be able to give 10% of our top line revenue.
Wow.
So every dollar that comes in, we just set aside 10% of it to go to these organizations, because it's not about making a bunch of money for me. It's like we as a team should be working to generate as much income as we can to be able to put it back into our communities and into God's kingdom. So that's like our
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nate, do you think that coming into this business in a non-traditional path, you didn't go to school, get an accounting degree, get your master's degree, get your CPA, go to work for a big four firm, spend 3 years working 80 hours a week and, going out at 1 a.m. with your buddies and talking about how, man, there's got to be a better way, not going down that path. Do you think that prepared you more to be able to build what you're building today, or do you think that the learning curve maybe has been longer for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely been learning curves for like what a process should look like for tax season.
Mm-hmm.
My mentor Jim Skidmore, we were paper based. I used a red pencil still during tax season and a 10-key calculator, and I would tape my calculations to the work papers. What I did learn from him is that he took a risk on me, and he was extremely generous for me and cared and helped give me flexibility for my family when I was having kids. And I was like, I want to be able to pay it forward, because he invested a lot into me. And so I think that was a huge win. But I also think coming from a non-traditional background, you don't get stuck in the mindset of like, this is the way it's always got to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's benefits to it. And I think there would also be benefits from going the traditional route. So pros and cons on both sides for sure.
I think you touched on this. I'm more of a validation question. Do you think that it has allowed you to look at stereotypical mindset processes and ask why?
Yeah.
I know that again, something you said when we first started recording, that tax season shouldn't be as chaotic as it is. I'm not a tax person. I've provided services to the industry for a number of years, but it's always perplexed me two things. One, there's this, and I understand we can't move tax dates, but and there is some crunch to that. I get that.
Yeah.
But people shouldn't act like it's a surprise. It's there.
Totally.
It's kind of like, with a house full of boys, I'm sure that you have kids that, well, at least one of your kids is the type of kid that likes to scare everybody. So, it's one thing if you don't know he's around the corner. It's a whole other thing if he says, hey, Dad, I'm going to go hide around the corner to scare you.
That's right.
Tax season doesn't hide around the corner. We know where it is. We know what those dates are. And then the other thing is, from the standpoint of people and hiring and capacity, it always perplexes me on this side of the desk when I get phone calls from clients of, holy crap, it's December 3rd. I need to hire 3 people. I should have called you 4 months ago. So do you think having that non-traditional background has allowed you to look at things and go, man, that doesn't make sense. I know this is how everyone does it, but I don't get it.
100%. Yeah, I think coming into it, it was like immediately from the beginning, it was about how can we do things differently and, ultimately disrupt the status quo of the accounting industry as a whole. And it wasn't my end goal to grow a big firm in the beginning. It was really for me to just have work-life balance with my family. And then how much Jim poured into my life, it was when he had made the offer for me to purchase his firm, I knew I couldn't go it alone. And I knew I wouldn't want to grow like flatline and just be like, we'll just maintain and hope for the best. And so we're like, I know if you have a company and have employees and team members, like we're going to have to do something to where we're trying to build something.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife and I prayed a lot about that of, if we take this step, it's going to mean we're going to try to build something, opposed to me just being a self-employed tax preparer for a few folks. And that was a big hinge point for us. But it was also, I think coming at it from the perspective of, well, if we do this and we can open up opportunities for other people to experience at a firm that's challenging the status quo of accounting, then I hope we can do that. And I think I had that happen on LinkedIn. In terms of status quo, I posted something about entity structuring, and it's like gotten so much mixed perception. You can't do that, and blah 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 blah. And then I feel like that's pretty creative, and I think the strategy there. So the idea of challenging the status quo goes beyond just the day-to-day work. It also is hopefully helping clients, think creatively about their opportunities that they can take advantage of.
I think that we all, in whatever space we play in, I think that we get into ruts. And I've mentioned this story a couple of times in the past on other podcast episodes. When we were coming out of COVID, there was a client that I had ended up selling his firm recently, but he was in a suburb in the Dallas area. That's not an easy suburb to commute to.
Mm.
And trying to find people for them was not an easy task. And we kept talking about the prospect of remote work. And he finally called me one day after we talked about it for almost a year. He called me one day and he said, "Hey, I think I've got the reason why we're not doing this." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "Because I don't want to." And I kind of laughed, and he said, "But there's a follow-up to that." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I've also come to the realization that that's not a good enough reason."
Yeah.
And I think there's so many things traditionally in any business, but especially in accounting, I think there's things that are traditional that you do. And if someone really was honest about it, the answer would be either because that's the way I want it done, or that's the way I've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think coming from the direction that you have, it's giving you the opportunity to ask some questions and ask some whys and challenge some status quos that not only impact your firm, but also your clients. And I'm sure that you've seen that from your clients' perspectives as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's been fun finding other communities now. And that was something I really missed out on in the beginning was other CPA firm owners. Now that there's communities out there that I could be a part of, hearing from them and finding other like-minded folks. So it's like, I'm not the only one thinking about this, other people, and it's getting to think together about how to address these issues and opportunities in accounting has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that there is something so important about community, whether that's in your personal life, your marriage, your work, whatever it is. There's something just so genuine about community, and it can be as simple as sitting in a room and not saying a word, but just listening, and you sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only guy that struggles with that.
That's it.
We're not the only firm with clients like that. Oh, I thought we were the wrong people in this picture. It's not. Everyone's dealing with this same challenge. There is a lot of value in that. So when you look at your firm today, is there a particular vertical that you guys spend more time in than another, or are you industry agnostic?
Yeah, we, as of the middle of last year, we started to do we do a quarterly planning meeting as a leadership team. And then we do an annual State of the Union or State of the Company with the whole team and talk through opportunities and what we're trying to do as a company and get feedback from the whole team. But the middle of last year, we decided that it was time to start to niche down. And we looked at our client base and said, who have we really enjoyed working with? And that's where we came across folks in a direct medical care space. Those are people that don't accept insurance, but they are providing services directly to the patient. And this movement has started to really grow. And the physicians and business owners in that space have particularly been incredibly enjoyable to work with. And their model aligns with our model. So there's a lot of shared values. So we started to double down into that space. We lost focus towards December. And then we started reading the book Traction. And it was it's time to get laser focused on what we're doing. So for us, we look at it now, that's the industry we want to be in. We've identified our target list. We are now 100% going after that. And all of our marketing spend and everything is going towards that specific group because they're ultimately going to change healthcare in America. And the way it's going, we want to be a part of how can we help create sustainable businesses in that arena by helping people understand pricing, building a good budget, having a good tax plan, having a proactive team that's talking with them throughout the year instead of just once a year in tax season. And the response so far has been overwhelmingly positive. It's been a lot of fun to make connections in that space. And so now we offer that benefit to our employees because it's hey, if you come in, we're going to pay for you to go see a direct primary care physician. You can schedule a meeting with them or schedule an appointment with them within 1 week. You can text them if you want to. And we want you to experience the benefit of that industry. So then when you're doing the bookkeeping for them or you're prepping the tax return or sitting on an advisory call or prepping a budget, you're also being wow, I'm helping this organization provide this to other people. And it's going to transform and make a big impact on other people's life. So that's a long answer to are we niched or not. But yeah, that's the industry we're primarily focused on.
Well, I think it goes back to understanding that if you align those things and attach them to values and vision in the firm, those things start to become a lot more intertwined
Mm-hmm.
and have a lot more weight behind them. So, in the direct care space, is it anyone in anything from a specialty vertical? Or, I know that there's people that do dentists, there's people that do functional medicine docs, there's, a lot of different things. I've got a client that does nothing but medical aesthetics
Oh yeah.
doctors. So, are you guys, again, pretty agnostic through that, or is there, another layer of focus there?
Yeah, if you were to like go to the center of our ideal client profile and hit the target on the bullseye, that would be direct primary care. So your family doc. You go to, once a year for your annual physical, but that's the person you call when somebody's sick. One of our clients, they have a tagline that's just basically like everybody needs a doctor in the family. And so that's our like primary. But then as you circle out from there, chiropractors, therapists, mental health counselors that don't accept insurance, they're like direct to client pay
Yep.
on a monthly subscription or something like that would be inside of our vertical as well. But the center of that dot is primary care.
Got it. So, when you look at the makeup of your business today, are you guys predominantly subscription-based pricing? Has it always been that way? Was there a pivot towards that path? What does it look like today? What was it in the past?
In terms of our own services, yeah, in the very beginning, when we started acquiring those firms, it was like 50-50 in terms of annual tax prep and then like a monthly or quarterly subscription. It's now to the point that the tax prep is about 10% of our revenue, and then 90% is subscription based packages. So
Wow.
either tax advisory and then our monthly accounting team package is what we're doing now. So
And I think that's, you touched on this. I think that's really where the value comes in that you're providing to your clients. I don't know if you have read anything or listened to anything that Ron Baker has ever talked about from the standpoint of pricing. Ron is a subscription based pricing. He's preached it for probably about 30 to 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Written a couple of great books on it. Had Ron on my podcast about a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And one of the questions he threw out was, if you as a firm owner gave away for free your compliance work, what would you charge for? And trying to get leaders to understand compliance isn't going to change somebody's life. It's going to keep them compliant. It's going to keep the IRS off their back. But outside of that, you didn't start your business. I didn't start my business just because we wanted a business. There's a reason behind it. There's things that we want to accomplish. There's things that you want to transform. The way you do that is you run a highly profitable, well-run business. And to do that, you need people to help guide you along the way.
We hope you enjoyed part 1 of John Randolph's conversation with Nate Goodman. Part 2 will air September 10th. Be sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and visit our website at cpalifepodcast.com for links, show notes, and more. We'll see you next time on CPA Life. ProfessionalProductions.net